Welcome to the Space Marketing Podcast, where we look at marketing principles, strategies, and tactics through the lens of space. Hi, I am your host, Izzy House, and I am so excited to share this journey with you as we explore the different kinds of space industries. On this episode, we will look at space architecture and how thoughtful design can make happy and healthy space explorers as well as Earthlings. So lift off in 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Space Marketing Podcast. Information relating to our discussion today and links to the video version can be found in the episode show notes on spacemarketingpodcast.com. Please like and subscribe to the podcast. It will help more people reach beyond the atmosphere. Information in this episode is for entertainment and information only. Please consult a professional for your specific situation. Our next guest is Phnam Bagley with Nonfiction. I have known her for several years now, and I am still blown away every time we see each other. She has a creative mind and sees the world in a completely new way. I have cobbled together a few things that I have read in her posts. Phnam Bagley designs the future of everything on and off the planet. She is a space architect that rethinks aspects of pleasure and comfort in space and makes the world a better place through good design. She has 4 key takeaways from her talks. One is the future of space architecture is centered on the human experience. The future of space must consider function, aesthetics, and value, not just function alone. This applies to food, sleep, work, health, and even contemplation. Surviving in space is not enough. Pleasure makes it easier for everyone to be comfortable and productive, especially as we welcome more commercial astronauts. And finally, her company designs in extreme environments to innovate quickly and then find opportunities to benefit people and ecosystems on Earth. Hello, Phnam, and welcome to the Space Marketing Podcast.
Hello, Izzy. It's so nice to have this commentary recorded between the two of us. That's never happened before. I'm excited.
Oh, and it has not been that long since we've seen each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, we've known each other for a little bit now.
Mm-hmm.
I think we met on the overview roundtable.
That's right.
Initially, and that was during the year of the pandemic.
That's right.
The first year. And then we keep going to the same conferences, though you go to a lot more conferences than I do. So you have been traveling a lot this year. So Tell us what you've been doing.
Yeah, I've been traveling a lot this year. I just hit my 9th country, and we're in the beginning of August 2023. It's a lot of meeting new clients in different industries. So I work in aerospace, I work in health and wellness, in transportation, in architecture, and things like that. So meeting some really cool people who have great ambitions. And then, we have conversations about how we can make that beautiful world that we all want, but also make sure that it's, profitable in the end, right? Because good intentions don't really get you too far. So really the business aspect of design and of architecture, of space architecture as we practice it at Nonfiction is so incredibly important. And I'm actually interested in digging deeper in the subject of marketing with you because because without telling the story to the right people in the right numbers, right, a lot of good intentions and good ideas just die in the ether. And so I find that marketing is such an important, has such an important place in that transformation we're all going through. And that's not only applicable to space, it's really applicable to everything. I truly believe that climate change has a huge marketing problem, right? For the same
Exactly,
reasons.
yes.
So yeah, let's dig deep into that.
I have a saying that I do, and it's, how can you build a business, create an industry, or change the world if no one knows you exist?
Mm-hmm.
And marketing is what makes you exist. You can have a cure for cancer, and if nobody knows about it, it's not gonna do anything. It's not gonna save anybody. So, marketing is how you make things come into awareness.
Yeah.
And one of the things that is a very valuable marketing thing you have been doing, and that is getting on that stage. And it is terrifying. Number one, yes, and and there are things that you can do to actually help. But when you first get out there and you become the poster child, it's a different experience.
It's funny because you use the word terrifying for public speaking or being on stage or bearing what you do in front of strangers. I think it was for the first 2 or 3 times that I did it. It certainly was when I did the TED Talk for obvious reason. I mean, there was a lot of things at stake there. But for the most part, I find it so incredibly enjoyable because there's a lot of passion in sharing good ideas with strangers, right? It's like starting a conversation with someone and see where it goes. Because inevitably after every talk, I have a line of people wanting to start conversations. They're like, oh, I really connected with that part of your talk. Can we go deeper on that subject? I'm like, oh, this is fascinating. Yeah, let's do this. And I think that's really the point of public speaking, of putting out ideas, of sharing what's so special about the way we do things is that it starts conversations that I otherwise would never have had, and I love it.
And conversations, that is marketing. 100%. It's a conversation. Now, if you are talking to somebody via social media, you're talking to somebody from the stage, you're talking to somebody through print media, you're still having a conversation. And that's where a lot of people forget that marketing is about the conversation. It's about the exchange, and especially more in this day and time than any time before.
Yeah.
Now, with public speaking, the TED Talk, one of the things that I've discovered about public speaking is when you start to do it, it is terrifying. I'm an introvert by nature. But if you forget why it terrifies you and start to think about who you're giving that information to, and it starts to become about them, the terror goes away. So, but it's so important to be a voice. So tell us about your TED Talk and how that came about.
Yeah, so the subject of the TED Talk is actually a space project that we did on the subject of food. So NASA and the Canadian Space Agency, along with Methuselah Foundation, put together a competition a couple years ago called the Deep Space Food Challenge. And so the premise of the challenge is to figure out what and how we're going to feed astronauts on their way to a deep space mission, like going to Mars or further. Food is one of those subjects that people don't really think about as a problem when they think about going to space, because they think, oh, just freeze dry everything, or create ready-to-eat packages. But these are essentially guaranteed to be consumable for about 2 years. Whereas going to Mars and back is going to take 2.5, 3 years, going further, obviously longer. And so we're at a place in the history of food production and conservation where we need to innovate. And that's why they open the competition to universities, to companies, and to creative groups like ourselves. And so we entered a competition with the idea of not necessarily redefining the science of food, because none of us are scientists, but really defining it in terms of experience. if I were isolated from the rest of humanity and I was putting my life on the line to explore corners of the solar system, what would I want to eat? What would I want to drink? What kind of experience do I want, right? And then the subject of pleasure came up pretty quickly because, unlike perhaps 0.5% of the population, a lot of us eat for pleasure, even if, we also eat for habit, right? 3 meals a day, or, something hot in the morning, something cool for lunch, or something satisfying at night. Everybody has their own type of rituals that they have around food. And so giving the astronauts a certain level of agency while they're away, instead of having some scientist or some dietitian tell them what to eat every morning, lunch, and dinner, was very important to us. So we invented this, 4-machine system that lets you make creamy coffee in the morning, some very nutritious snacks, as well as creating a space barbecue in an environment that's not very conducive to it, and fresh greens and fruit if you'd like some. So yeah, many combinations are possible when you give astronauts the opportunity to create the food they want, however they want it.
When we think about food down here, a lot of people, like you said, don't think about the astronauts and what they're eating. But food is a very vital part of our connection, our celebration. And nutrition is not very high up on the totem pole, really, as far as...
Some people like to think it is. I have plenty of people come to me and talk raving about, fasting and taking all those supplements, and all that sounds fairly terrible to me. I'm sure, they'll extend their lives, some months, I guess, but I don't know. I'm not.
It'll seem longer.
Yeah. I want to eat real food, not just powders, right? And I feel a lot of people want that, especially when a lot is put upon them. There's stress, there's isolation, there's a lot of work demands, there's living in microgravity or partial gravity, there's micro meteorite threats. There's a lot going on in space that we don't really think of when we live on Earth, and that actually has an impact on our appetite and the health that's connected to the way we eat and we live.
And how happy we are. I mean, if you are eating, slop, for a better word, every meal, you're going to get depressed. When we eat a piece of chocolate or we eat, something crunchy, it releases dopamine, and it releases a feeling of well-being.
Yes.
And, that's critical when you don't think you're going to see home for a while.
Yeah. Very interestingly, in the last 5 or 6 years, I've met 2 people who only eat for sustenance. And I didn't believe them at first because these words don't go together in my brain. And I started having conversations with them, and they very clearly had no desire, no joy associated with the multisensory experience of food, which is smelling, seeing, tasting, crunching, all of that. It just doesn't bring them anything. It's fascinating, right? Humans are fascinating all around for all of our differences. So it's good to be exposed to people like that. But thankfully, the majority of us actually enjoy our food.
One of my favorite pastimes is actually to taste travel, is what I call it, and it is to watch different traveling, where people are going to different countries and sampling different flavors, and then bring that home. And with my son, when he wouldn't eat vegetables, we taste traveled, and now he'll eat anything. And food is going to be different when you travel.
Yeah.
And it's going to be created from different things. We can't bring everything with us. We have to grow, we have to make, and we have to figure out how to create food from nothing, really.
Yeah. I mean, there are some groups that are actually still in the Deep Space Food Challenge competitions who have found ways to, create food from air, or from, acetate, create artificial photosynthesis. I mean, all of this sounds like complete magic to me, but they figured out the equations, they figured out a prototype that functions, and then now it's time to scale and see what the potential of it is, not only for the space applications in extreme environments, but also how that can help, multiply, the nutrients available for everyone on this planet as we're reaching more billions of people, right? That trend is accelerating. It's not only about giving people enough vitamins or enough protein. We want to give people actual food that they desire, that aligns with their own cultures and expectations. And so there's a lot of revolution in the world of food that's very interesting right now. I'm involved in both space-related food and Earth-related food on projects, and there seems to be more and more correlations between the two.
And Earth itself, it's a spaceship. If we start thinking of it as a spaceship, we need to create different food processes down here too. We can't keep continuing to do what we've been doing. It's not working. And I love how you talk about the climate crisis and about how the marketing is imperative. That is one of the reasons why I do what I do, is because I believe space is the way to get to a healthier planet. Because when we have to create an ecosystem out there where we don't die, then we can take all that technology down here so that we don't die and that we thrive instead of just survive.
But the thing that you and I have probably heard a million times is these skeptics who come to us and say, well, if we know how to do it in space, why don't we do it on Earth in the first place? Innovation is a very strange thing that happens when you throw constraints at it. If you're given all the reins and all the money in the world and all the resources possible, you will never find a solution, because this is a systemic, complex problem that has been put in place over 150, 200 years, right? It's not just a flip of a switch that will turn it off. So in order to really break down the first principles of each problem, where it comes from, how it interacts with the next problem, working in an extreme environment like space actually helps us solve concrete problems one after another, and then eventually come up with a solution that can be scaled to planet Earth. That's why we have to do it that way.
Hold on to your boosters. We will be right back with guest Phnam Bagley with Nonfiction after a brief message from our sponsors. Please like and subscribe to the Space Marketing Podcast so you don't miss a thing. As far as marketing is concerned, you have your speaking, telling your story is huge, and you've been doing it for about 4 years. But entering the food challenge is also one of the things I talk about in my book, as far as how to get your awareness of your existence out. Yeah. Because every time NASA writes about the food challenge, guess who they write about? And it gives you a platform to be able to talk about what it is that you do. So being in a competition is a part of marketing as well. So
it is.
Talk a little bit?
It is, and I would say there's a little bit of a hierarchy of competitions, because I have acted a few times as a competitor and a few times as a judge of competition. And as a competitor, I always try to think of the why behind the entering, right? The Deep Space Food Challenge made sense because it was marrying all of these aspects of space that very much align with what we do every day, which is the human experience and then rituals and technology and, you know, extreme environment and all that. It just felt like it was designed for us. So it made sense for us to enter it. And then since, you know, part of my job is also the world of design without space, I see a lot of competition that is put together somewhat for the wrong reasons, right? It's a lot of, you know, the same 10 companies patting themselves on the shoulder for winning the same, you know, award for the 10th year in a row. Like it has lost its meaning, right? Like student competitions are pretty great because then it gives you a platform to put your name out there, to, you know, spruce your resume a little bit before you find your first job. I think all of that is very useful. But in the end, when I look at a competition, I really want to see what about the competitions and the entry is advancing the imagination that surrounds the future of an industry, right? Because if it's just the same stuff,
inspiration,
yeah.
yes.
If it's the same stuff, if it's the same shapes, if it's the same ideas year after year that are being rewarded, like what is this for, right? I'm not even going to talk about the money machines that certain competitions are about, but you know that they do exist and it's pretty obvious. I mean, it's come to a point where people who, you know, job candidates who come to me and just flaunt this in front of me, thinking that's all their achievements. You know, it's very hard for me to actually respect someone for only focusing on that, right? Yeah, I mean, competitions are a thing. Public speaking, as we talked about earlier, the TED Talk came as a complete surprise. I mean, never in my life would I think that, you know, after public speaking for 3.5, 4 years, I'd be asked to do that.
Right.
Yeah, because it was by invitation, right? It kind of came out of the blue. I received this email, and the first impression was like, is this spam, right?
I can imagine that would be.
I almost deleted this email because I don't really, you know, look at any of this thing. And it turns out it was not. And the experience was incredible, right? And I got to speak at the TED headquarters theater. That was incredible. Met some, I mean, the training itself is state of the art. It's a lot more than expected. Like, they make you work for it, that's for sure. Definitely learned a lot. And one takeaway is, and this is not a negative, it's just that I learned that the TED way of speaking is very, very different from my natural way of speaking. I speak very intuitively. When I'm on stage, when I look in the eyes of my audience, I kind of get a feel for it, whether they want the more serious stuff, or they want to laugh, or they want to, you know, they want to hear anecdotes. And I kind of change the way I speak accordingly, right? Kind of like the idea of reading the room and offering the audience what they need. Whereas at TED, everything was predetermined and extremely rehearsed, which felt very, very uncomfortable to me, right? Like, it's funny because they kept on repeating, we're not asking you to act, you're not actors. And I'm like, I agree, I'm not an actor. I'm a terrible actor, actually. And so I'm not entirely sure what you're asking me to do here. And so I guess, you know, I did the best I could with the methodologies that I was given. But, you know, if you ask me how I feel about my TED Talk, it feels very foreign to me. When I hear myself
It's done
speak.
very well.
Thank you.
It's gotten over 1 million views,
Yes.
which is incredible.
I didn't expect that either, because I mean, food in space, it doesn't get more niche of a subject than that, to be honest. So, but they found a way to make it work.
It's becoming popular.
Yeah.
I saw an ad for a new cooking show with Duff in it and 2 other celebrity chefs, and it's about food in space.
That's really cool.
Together, and I'm like, oh, so you know, space is becoming a trend that a lot of other companies are trying to lock onto, and you know, which help you get the word out about space and maybe make that connection that's lacking right now.
Yeah.
You know, most people don't understand how their lives are affected by space.
Yeah.
And And
Or even before it is affected by space, right? Just a conversation of food in space, or food talked by terrestrial chefs about for the future of space. That's kind of like a toe in the world of space that is more relatable, right? You can talk about eating in space to pretty much anyone, 5-year-olds, grandparents, but it's very hard to talk about propulsion, right? You get nerdy very quickly. So yeah, I mean, there's something very fascinating about something as basic as food and as fascinating and almost unreachable as space.
And I want to go back a little bit of talking to about, you said that you read the room and it's not as rehearsed as the TED Talk. That's one of the things that I have to stress, that the practice, get on that stage and just keep doing it. And sooner or later, you're going to resonate with that audience, and you're going to feel them, and the change in your talk will happen as almost instinctual.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel the crowd and you become one with them. It's like, the vibrations match. And when that happens,
it's magic.
It's magic. It is total magic. So, for those of you out there that are terrified of becoming public speakers, Toastmasters helps. And that's where I actually did it for years. And, but just doing it, getting out there.
It's funny. I was asked recently why I speak so much on stage by a colleague, and my response to her was, well, I have a lot of things to say, right? And what I have to say changes over time. I look at talks that I did a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They're drastically different from what I have to say today. What I have to say changes over time, because I get to learn new things every day, because I get to learn from speaking more and more, different audiences and things like that. And there's a joy in learning more, in refining the craft, in targeting the right people with the right message at the right time, right? And I mean, it sounds like I'm talking about marketing right now, but that is an ingredient of...
It gets your story out. It tells your story. You tell your story. And it's crafting that message before you ever get on stage. It's not coming up with it once you hit that step. That's the last moment you should be doing that. But once you know what it is that you're about, just like with marketing on anything, whether it's print or social, when you know what that kernel is of that message, everything else falls into place.
Mm-hmm.
So
another aspect of public speaking and I guess marketing that we practice is we try to do it authentically. I know it sounds like kind of corny to say that, because obviously, but no, it's not obvious, right?
It's not, or else a lot more people would be doing it.
Exactly.
Because how many ads do you see on TV that you're just like, oh, you just totally don't get me, and you fast forward.
Right? Yeah. And I think it has a lot to do in the way I present myself, right? I mean, I usually look a lot younger than I am. A lot of people are very shocked by how old I am. I have blue hair, asymmetric haircut. I usually have like pretty fun clothes and fun colors on me, shiny shoes. I don't
think
necessarily
you designed yourself.
I did.
The clothes?
I did.
Because the clothes are not anything I've ever seen.
No, I don't design the clothes. I thank you. My secret is go with Belgian and Japanese designers. They know how to make comfortable clothes with very distinctive silhouettes, which are really my two favorite directions in clothes. No, I designed the way I look and the way I present myself, and I also designed the way I speak, because my first language is French, so I had to learn English to speak fluent English in my early 20s. So I still have a little bit of an accent, but not so much that it's disturbing, I guess. But I also want
enough to where it's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And
yes.
and I had to work my rhythm. I had to work the way I tell a story, when it reaches a peak and when it falls and how it ends, right? All of that is like personal training. You rehearse with your friends or with your significant other, and you see what works and what doesn't, and it's basically the same for everybody else. And the way I present myself physically, I have to be comfortable. And another thing is that I'm actually quite shy. I know it surprises a lot of people when I say that, but I actually am. I don't like to come up to strangers and say, hi, how can we work together? I think that's very, very disingenuous. So I created this persona, this physical persona, so people would come to me and they would say hello. And they would ask the question, hey, where did you get this? And where'd you get your haircut? And this and that. And naturally would turn into a professional conversation from there. But there's also that first impression, right? Like, work on your first impression with the accent, with the way you present yourself, with the way you command a room. All of this can be designed.
Your clothes and your hair and all that tells a story before you ever even say a word.
Yes.
So it's with marketing, I equate it to being a person. Your brand is like a person. It is how you smell. There's a whole gamut of things that scent marketing. And I know that you know about how important scent is. You just with food, you can trigger a lot of really, like when you talk about the sumptuousness of coffee. Well, part of that is the smell of the coffee as well. So, when you create your brand, it's also how your brand dresses. It's the clothes that it wears. Is it, flip-flops, or is it high heels, or, what is the personality of it? So, that tells your story too.
And how does it evolve, right? I mean, the way I dressed when I was 15 versus 20 versus 30 versus now has evolved. Not because I have to follow certain expectations of society, is because our level of comfort for certain things evolve over time, right? I used to be okay sleeping on floors in hostels. Now I want a clean bathroom and a clean bed, right? It changes over time, and our relationship to others is the same. We create boundaries over time, knowing what we want and what we don't want out of people's relationships. And that's a healthy thing to do, right? And I wish more people were more conscious of that, instead of continually making themselves miserable going after something that they actually don't want.
And they don't even know they don't want it. Yeah. And one of the things is you talk about age, and I am getting to a point in my life as well where I'm a lot older than it just happens.
Yeah.
But I gotta say that your confidence also changes.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference in how you look and how you act. And as you get older, your confidence increases in who you are.
Yeah.
And it's the ones that try to hide that who they are, that it screams the loudest. But when you embrace who you are and go out there, it's just, it makes a total difference in your message.
We're currently working on a project here at the office about menopause and how we can relieve symptoms, which are horrendous, way worse than I knew before I had to study it. And there's a lot of empowerment around women going through the menopause, which, by the way, lasts much longer than I ever thought. I thought it would last like 2-3 months. It can last up to 10 years. That's horrendous. But the empowerment of knowing who you are, of knowing what you don't want out of life, of asking for what you need, of being your own person and not a person compared to another person. These are pretty wonderful things that come with age, right? And perhaps we all have to go through these phases of insecurities throughout our lives and our decades in order to get there properly. But it would reduce a lot of anxiety if we knew all those things earlier, for sure.
Oh my gosh, if I could go back and tell the younger version of myself the things that I have learned, and to, you know, oh, I mean, just the little things of learning how to speak in front of people.
Yeah.
Just that, you know, the 20-year-old me would never speak to anybody I did not know very well. And, you know, if I had that skill back then, where would my career have been? Because it's all about having that communication. So, yes.
So I used to believe that. I used to believe that it would have been a great thing to have known more in my youth, but over time I've realized that there's actually a lot of magic in not knowing, and in being naive, and in making dumb mistakes, and in doing all those things. I mean, I have like hundreds of hilarious stories about, you know, me in stupid situations, and sure, it felt uncomfortable on the spot, but then it has become my lore, right? Like, all the stories make me who I am today, and I would be a very different person without all of these, and I'm not sure I would be a better person without all of these.
That is a good point. That is a very good point. I mean, we are our experience. And without those bad experiences, you probably wouldn't have come up with some of the solutions that you come up with today.
No. When you start a project and you know where you're going already, it's probably a bad decision, or someone else has already done it. And it's not
fun.
No.
Yeah, it's not fun. You know, it's the journey of the unexpected, the unknown, the research, and the digging into it because you don't know. Yeah. That's the part that I love.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your company, Nonfiction.
Yes. So, well, before Nonfiction, I was what's called an industrial designer. So someone who designed physical products for mass manufacturing. So think about the computer you're using right now, the headphones, or your smartphone, or your table, or your car. So I was trained to design all of these things with or without electronics. You know, working very closely with mechanical engineers. And then after designing, you know, this kind of products for a long time, I realized, well, what am I designing all this for, right? I'm designing a bunch of products that people buy, you know, they're happy about it for about 2 or 3 years, and then they throw away. And then it just piles up in this giant landfills that we have all over this planet, whether on land or in the ocean. And so, you know, after going through a little bit of a crisis of the why I do what I do, I decided to team up with my own husband, who's also a designer, and we started this company called Nonfiction. And at first, Nonfiction was a classic industrial design firm because that's what we knew what to do, right? And then after a couple years, we started building a reputation and wanted to narrow what we wanted to do. Again, talking about constraints, you do better innovation by creating constraints. So the constraints we get ourselves is, one, to not do any work that's been done before. So first to market is what we do. And then and everything that we do has to benefit either people or planet, right? And then everything we do has to become real, which is why we call our company Nonfiction. Because there's a lot of good intentions that die in the stage of conceptual design. That's not really what we do. And so after we've kind of established these 3 points, we're like, okay, so what is the essence of what we do? Again, marketing, you know, how do we say all of that in one sentence? And that had a lot to do with actually some personal development exercises that I went through, which is figuring out what my life purpose was and how it aligns with what I do every day. So I get to love every day of my job. And then after a couple years of work, I figured out the sentence, turning science fiction into reality for a better future. And once I found that sentence, everything in my life, everything at work started aligning in the most bizarre way. Clients, their ambitions, the way we talked about things had a sense of clarity going both ways, clarity in the way we express ourselves and clarity in the way people perceived us. And I thought that was the most magical exercise. So every time, someone comes to me and say, oh, I'm very confused about what I do. I love so many things. I don't know who I am. I always tell them, what is the one sentence that is the essence of who you are day, night, and tomorrow? So hopefully people get to find it early enough.
It is about the journey. Sometimes it's about the journey. I've been in marketing my whole career, but not space. I've loved space. I've loved science fiction. But it wasn't until I went back to school, because my industry had changed so much, that I started thinking, what would give me juice every day? What would I find meaningful to wake up every day and do? And so, I married. It was actually an epiphany moment. It was standing at the Space Shuttle Atlantis.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've been there.
No.
Have you been there?
The one that's down in LA right now?
No. That's the Intrepid, I believe.
Yeah, Intrepid. No. Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
I have not seen that one.
Okay.
But it's on my list to do. Yeah. But this is the one in Florida.
Gotcha.
That is at the Kennedy Space Center. And there's an experience that they have created with the display of the Atlantis. And it was at that moment I'm like, yes, I can combine both my passions. And it's a blue ocean. It's needed. There's not many people in it yet. They don't know they need it.
Yes.
And
which is a little bit of a problem. But yes.
But they're getting there.
Yes.
A lot of the people that I saw in space reminded me of when I first started in what I do. And I was in an environmental technology incubator.
Yeah.
And this was like all these little baby companies that benefited Earth. It was pretty awesome. And I watched most of them never make it out of the incubator because they did not respect marketing. And they think it's just sales. But it's not. It's about spreading your story. So I'm going to bring that back to the TED Talk.
Yes.
And your story that you're spreading. Yeah. Ideas that spread.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And another thing I've noticed about space as well is it's one of those disciplines that doesn't need motivation. Like, I've never heard anybody say, oh, I need to encourage my kid to go into the space industry. I've never heard that sentence uttered, because usually kids are into it naturally, right? And also burnout. I'm sure there's burnout in the space industry, but it's very rare compared to healthcare, for example, or education, or anything else. And I really want to understand why that is. And perhaps there's something that the world of marketing can take advantage of, right? That natural passion for exploration, for the unknown, for the farthest place the humans have ever been to. What is our fascination with that?
It's hard.
Yeah.
Why do we climb the mountain? Yeah. It's because it's there. It's to quote Kennedy. But we love hard. We don't love impossible, but we do love hard. And business is hard. And look how many people get into business. And so combining the two is very hard. But there's something rewarding that when you finally get to that summit.
Yeah.
And you can see where you've been.
Yeah.
And you did something that was good. And space is good. It inspires people. It changes lives. And like I said, I think it can heal the planet.
Yeah.
So, which we desperately need. And, back in the 70s, we didn't even know we had holes in the ozone. And it was space that showed us that we had a hole. And it was then that we could go and change the legislation, and those holes are healing because we saw it from space. So,
Well, the fascination with space, the way you're describing it, has a lot to do with perspective. It's no longer about me in my body looking through my eyes, the little life that I live, right? It's about the planet, which is enormously bigger than me, seen from a different perspective, which are the eyes of the satellites. And, the data that's collected, going through all of these filters that turn into statements that mean something or not, right? I think technology in general, for that reason, is so incredibly important in our lives. It's funny because, I work in the most extraordinary technology, in neuroscience and, propulsion and all that every day, but I also have a deep respect for staying away from technology, right? I think a lot of the meaningful,
yes.
a lot of the meaningful things that we have in our lives, the friendships and the rituals and things like that, have a lot to do with what we do without technology. Technology in the sense of, zeros and ones and computers and things like that. Of course, there's technology in making things, in creating things, and in transforming them. But yeah, I mean, that's something that's also very, very important in my work, is that I always look to the past and what was valued in the past in order to see and understand what can be valued in the future. Because a lot of things are cyclical in that way. I'm not necessarily talking about trends, which are smaller cycles, but really talking about how humans constantly want to come back to the same things, right?
It's how we're wired.
Exactly.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you're doing right now, in the product development that you're doing, and the science behind what it is that you do.
Yeah. A lot of the projects that we're working on have to do with the brain. The brain is this mysterious organ that is at the root of many things in our lives, but we know so little about it. But more and more researchers, neuroscientists, psychologists are uncovering mysteries of the brains that are pretty incredible, right? Using electricity or stimulation with light pulses, you can do things that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction, like retaining memory, or falling asleep in 15 minutes, or learning movement faster, by tapping into your sense of flow. All of that can be done non-invasively, if you like, or you can do it invasively with deep brain implants. So we work on a wide range of these products, and they actually teach us a lot about what the future technology is doing. One of the major takeaway I've taken from working on these projects is we're not necessarily creating products that do the things for you. We're creating products that stimulate your own body, your own senses, to do what you need your body to do. It's and
talk about a few of those.
Yeah, for example, the sleep product that we launched last December, called Somni. So it was developed with a company called Stim Science, which is branched out of UC Berkeley here in the Bay Area. And essentially, it creates an electrical stimulation of the prefrontal cortex. So it's on the front of your forehead, 15 minutes before bed. And then what it does is that it shows your brain a very specific pattern of brain waves that says, fall asleep, or become drowsy. And instead of stimulating the brain the rest of the night to say, okay, you have to follow these brain waves, this is a healthy night's sleep, what it does is that it turns off at the end of 15 minutes, and then your brain knows what to do the rest of the night. And so I feel like there's the future of technology, the way we move ourselves through a city, the way we go to space, work and live up there, the way we think about our health, has to do more of that thing, which is just hinting at what the right direction is, and have our bodies and our senses do the rest of the job. Because we're actually pretty powerful. Our minds are very powerful, our bodies are very powerful. And the disconnection between the two creates a lot of anticipation and anxiety that's prevents us from doing the things we could do. And because of that, we get into bad habits, and then we give up very easily, and then a slew of medical emergencies come up. So yeah, I've learned that there's a lot to be done. When it comes to depression, anxiety, dementia, Alzheimer. We worked on Parkinson's disease, cancer, heart disease. And realize that everything is a little connected, right?
It is. Yes.
The Western way of seeing medicine is more and more using Eastern kind of like ways of seeing things. The fact that you're healing the whole body instead of just a symptom is becoming more and more of the conversation.
It's like you said that the things that have been insanity is doing the same thing all the time, expecting a different result. And with a lot of the Western medicine, that's kind of what they've been doing. It's almost insanity. It's not doing what your body is meant to do, and it's blocking a lot of what you're learning about. And the mind is a powerful thing, and the body, if you've ever had any surgery or sickness or brokenness, and you see just how powerful that body heals, it is amazing. It is amazing.
I mean, just the power of PMA, positive mental attitude, is everything in life. We're designing this product that helps paraplegic walk again.
Wow.
And we've realized that people with positive mental attitude have drastically different results than people who don't, right? It is an ingredient to be taken in account seriously in order to guarantee results in people who need it most, right? And so the wholeness of a solution is so incredibly important, right? Right now, I'm also working with police department, teaching them about creativity and innovation, how they can tackle, societal problems like, addiction or homelessness or, internal problems like this. These are not flip of the switch type of problems, because the source comes from different places, right? There are societal sources. There's like, the availability of certain chemicals, different times of the decade. There's economic uncertainty that's not helping the situation. So how do you deal with this problem by tackling the root of where that problem comes from, rather than just fixing the symptoms, right? Like throwing apartments and food at homeless people is just a Band-Aid. It doesn't fix the problem.
It shows that you're attempting.
And a lot of the problems actually...
Yeah. It's showing that you're attempting. It's not really...
Yeah, exactly.
Why did the situation exist in the first place?
Exactly. And I think there's a power in interviewing these people as well, right? How often do you ask a homeless person what they want? Not what they need, but what they want. What do you want now? What do you want out of life? What did you want before you fell into this situation? And how that once was separated from reality, and now they're chasing something that is not working for them, right?
Right.
So I think asking the right question, using the right language. And that's why, I mentioned earlier, I grew up speaking French and learned English later, is when you learn a language as an adult, you're a lot more attentive to the subtlety of the meaning of each word. And so I have actually used that a lot in the way I practice design. I always question, why do we use this expression? And then, native English speakers around me would be like, well, I don't know. We always said it that way. I'm like, but it doesn't make any sense, right? What is the historical reason why we use this particular word with this particular Greek root or whatever and use it in this context? And I find that fascinating. Language is one of those intricately complex and very human artifacts that we have created that say a lot in very little.
Right.
And I love learning languages and applying them differently in different contexts.
When you were talking about, interviewing the people themselves, that's one of the ingredients that is missing in a lot of marketing as well, is they don't talk to the people that they're creating the message for. So they don't even know what the people want, what the people need, what are their problems, what are their dreams, what are their struggles. And it's only after you understand those things that you can craft that message in a way that will resonate. So it's
funny because being in Silicon Valley, a lot of people make the mistake of interpreting what Steve Jobs believed in. He didn't believe in like focus groups, and he said, I can't remember how he said it, but like if I gave people what they wanted or what they asked for, they probably wouldn't want it. And there's a truth to that, but you also have to think that he didn't come up with ideas, or his team didn't come up with ideas out of the blue, right? They did the research. There are certain aspects of technology that they saw as promising. Not every product that Apple ever came up with was widely successful, right? Like it's a certain percentage, but when it did become very successful, it's very easy to look back and say, oh, that methodology works, right? And it's not because that methodology worked at that time for that company with that CEO that it's going to work for my company. You have to really dig deep into the why,
Yes.
and also who you're designing for. Like every story, every story you've ever been told is about answering the what, the who, the where, the why, the how, right? And so marketing, from what I understand, is the same thing, right? How do you fill the gaps that will make people more interested in knowing more about your product and wanting to make it part of their lives, whether it's a product or something else.
And you make them the hero. You're the guide.
Yeah.
So in order to guide them, you need to understand their journey, their quest, where they're going. And then you can do a good job of that, and that's where Steve Jobs, he, like you said, he didn't win at everything he ever touched. And in fact, he was fired. He had a lot of trauma. But he understood that friction stops people, and what are their needs? What do they need it to do to make their lives better, to get to that end quest? So that's what we got to look at. Why are we even on the journey?
Hi, I'm Phnam.
Hi, I'm Martis.
And today we're going to talk about the future of humans.
For those of you who are listening right now, we are watching Phnam and Martis's show, The Future of Humans. Okay, so you have a video series of Future. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Future was born at the beginning of the pandemic lockdown in 2020, and it was born out of two needs. My partner and I used to be professors of industrial design and social impact and sustainability, and I personally realized that I actually didn't love teaching. The reason why I did it is because I truly believe that students should be given the chance to learn things that would be helpful in their transition from student to professional. It sounds very evident, but apparently it's not. And so we decided to create this video series and produce it ourselves that explains in layman's terms what designers do all day, how we think, how we make decisions, why the products that we design look the way they do, talk about ergonomics, about materials, about color, about all those things. And another aspect of the video series, Future, is about futurism. How do we see the future of different industries, of different technologies, and how it impacts us and how these technologies and these industries interact with each other in novel ways. And so that video series did multiple things. One, it spread to the world, an honest kind of like view of how designers work, because a lot of design is very under wraps. It's almost intimidating to non-designers, and we really wanted to break that. The other reason was, we used to have business development teams, and it just didn't lead to nothing interesting really. And so, in order to attract the right customers, we explained how we do things and how we innovate and how we make companies very successful just by telling case stories, basically. And so it's been very, very successful since then. We've actually attracted quite a few customers, or when they were on the fence between two studios, they went with us because we were able to explain to them very, very candidly how they can work with us, right? And that is marketing in some ways.
Oh, absolutely. There's a couple of things that are beautiful about what it is that you do, and that is that you establish a relationship. So these clients that are on the fence, they're watching you on your show, on your videos, and they get to know you. So, and they see how you work, and they begin to trust you because they know that you're going to take what they need to heart because they're watching it happen. They're seeing the proof. Plus, another benefit to that is that when you use case studies, you are sharing the love. You are marketing for your business partners as well as telling your story and telling their story. So it's a beautiful thing because everybody wins. The audience wins, the partners win, and you win, and it's and you tell your story. It's one of my favorite ways of doing it. So, bravo.
And it's all about thank you. And it's all about consistency. Because if I told you how we started this video series, we were in my living room. We had employees pull up blankets to damper sound reverberation. We had this crappy microphone. It was really, really bad. And we kept at it. And then I don't know how many episodes we have now, like maybe 50, really tackling all the aspects of design and the future of everything in a way that it starts conversations, right? Now we have potential client email us and sending us a link of our own video and say, hey, I haven't listened to this video. This point was very interesting. Let's work together, right? Like, again, it's a little bit like my haircut and the way I dress. It's how do you make strangers come to you so you don't have to come to them? That costs a lot less money.
Right. And you don't interrupt anybody's day.
No.
That's not a good way to do it.
No.
Pool marketing is what they actually call that, and it's a relationship. You're building a relationship even though you're not in the room. So it's
exactly
genius.
Thank you.
So, all right. So, final question for tonight is, what thoughts do you want to leave our audience with today, and where do you see, where do you want them to go in the future? What message do you want to leave them with?
So many thoughts. Just based on what we just talked about today, find who you are, find where you're going, find what your life purpose is. There's a lot of things that happen, as I said earlier, magically around you that just align to it. I don't know if it's the universe or whatever, invisible power that's happening out there, but ask and you shall receive, I guess. But that doesn't work without following through. I think that's the other side of this push towards taking risks and imagination and a creative life that I want to put out there. I see a lot of people with wonderful intentions when it comes to making the world a better place, saving penguins, whatever. It's all about follow through. How are you going to, one, tell the story of what you want to do, 2, collaborate with the people who can help you do it. And 3, make sure that you're here from the beginning till the end, right? And that's how we change the world, right? The science fiction is a great inspiration for that, actually.
Well, and one of the things about what you say is that sometimes we give up right before it tips, right before we hit that solution. So, sometimes you have to pivot. Yeah, that's part of life, is that you have to pivot. But it's wisdom to know when to pivot and when to knock down that wall and get to the other side.
Absolutely. One thing my therapist reminds me every couple of weeks is you don't get different results by doing the same things.
Right. So.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending your evening with me, and I can't wait to see what it is that you do. Like I said, every conversation we had, you may not even remember some of the things that you said, but it resonates with me, and I take it back with me. So, and I ponder. You make me ponder. And
yes,
that's
I love that.
Beautiful.
That's a great
thing.
compliment.
So,
maybe that's what people. Maybe that's the one thing that people need to walk out of this listening to this episode. How do you make people ponder?
How do you make people
ponder about?
A special thanks to Phnam Bagley with Nonfiction for sharing her journey to space. Be sure to check out her links listed in today's show notes. Please like and subscribe to the Space Marketing Podcast to help get the word out about this incredible place of space. I hope that you have found this podcast useful for your journey as you reach for the stars.